Hello, I'm Stuart Landon. I'm the producing artistic director at Open Stage, and we're absolutely thrilled that we have had a very full and fabulous week with the Good at Heart Festival. The Good at Heart Festival has been a week of wonderful art and conversation around social justice, and I can't think of a better way to finish up that conversation than with two fantastic community leaders here tonight at Open Stage in our studio theater. So I'd like to welcome to the Studio Theater stage Una Martone from Leadership Harrisburg and Joe Robinson, who is from the Martin Luther King Jr. Leadership Development Institute. So please put your hands together and welcome them to the stage. Thank you so much, Joe.
Thank you all so much. I'm Una Martone and with Leadership Harrisburg area.
And I'm Joe Robinson with the Martin Luther King Leadership Development Institute.
So Joe and I have known each other since 2006, and we've had the opportunity to share programming together. We've had the opportunity to work collaboratively and cooperatively on different projects and initiatives. But what came up in 2020 is the opportunity to be really intentional about doing diversity, equity, and inclusion programming. So we wanted to share with you a little bit about the programming that we do and some lessons learned. And of course, how you can reach out to Joe and I if you have questions or need more information. And so I'll just start by telling you first the why. Why we started this programming is, quite frankly, because we were asked to. We had community members come to us and say, you know, we need to have conversations. People need to talk about what's happening in the world and in the nation and in our community right here in central Pennsylvania. So we were asked to put programming together for diversity, equity, and inclusion. And that's what we did. We built a curriculum from scratch. We used resources that were readily available through research. And we put our own experiences together, both lived experiences and educational experiences that we've had the opportunity to participate in around diversity, equity, and inclusion. So that's how we came to be doing this programming together, and it really is a collaboration in the truest sense of the word. Sometimes you hear about partnerships. Well, if one partner leaves, maybe the other partner continues on, but with our two organizations and with Joe and I individually, we truly are collaborating in that we're each bringing something to this program. So if one or the other of us was not doing it, the program wouldn't be what it is.
It wouldn't be the same.
It would not be what it is. So I wanted to share some statistics with you regarding why diversity, equity, and inclusion matters. And these are some of the statistics that we share in the programming that we do. First and foremost, racially and ethnically diverse teams are 35% more likely to outperform industry standards. Diverse teams make better decisions 87% of the time. 87% of the time, diverse teams make better decisions. 80% of respondents said that DEI efforts are an important factor in choosing where to work. And in our community, we're all looking for dedicated, loyal, competent, responsible employees. And most especially the generation that's coming into the workforce now, they are looking for diversity where they work. And so it behooves all of our organizations to create that diversity. Another 78% of respondents believe that DEI offers a competitive advantage in the marketplace. It's a competitive differentiator for your organization. And 50% of U.S. employees are looking for their companies to invest more in promoting diversity, workplace equity, diversity, and inclusion. And so that's where Joe and I come in. Together, we have completed over 100 DEI trainings, where I think our number that I most recently looked up was 114 presentations that we've delivered together since 2020. And our total of people served
Drum roll, please.
is over 5,400 individuals. So, this was because someone asked us to step forward and be leaders in this space in our community, and Joe and I were able to say yes. And thankfully, our collaboration has been really effective over the last almost 3 years.
Wow.
So with that stage set, with all that information, and you know the output, you know how many people we've interacted with, Joe, have we made a difference?
My goodness, I'd like to think we have. I know you can look at quantitatively and say, well, what, 5,500 people, surely you've made a difference. But, from a qualitative side, yeah, I'd like to think that we've made a difference. Only because of some of the feedback we received from some of the organizations. People are really, coming to grips with this subject matter that was born out of necessity. The times that we live in require this kind of conversation. And people are, I think some people are having aha moments, I put it like that. And I think that's one way we measure our effectiveness. So it's not just about the numbers, but the fact that we're seeing light bulbs, go off on people. And that says to us that perhaps they're being challenged and motivated to look at things a different way. And I'd like to say we're making a difference, So you're always going to have some people who are still slower to come along, and that's okay. In fact, in the training, we encourage people. We recognize that some people may be a little bit longer on the uptake, and we don't know why, but for whatever reason, they are where they are, and we don't judge. Our intent is never to judge. That's the approach we take, is that we don't judge, we don't condemn, but we really try to have conversations, and one person at a time, try to turn people around. And so I'd like to think that we are making some headway. I hope that the majority of those 5,500 came out of it with a different perspective, and some already came into the training as allies already. And so it's not like we had to convert 5,500 people. That's not the intent, what I'm trying to suggest at all. But I'd like to say yes, we have made a difference, I believe, Una. But even as we look at it, this was for us, it was also an opportunity for us to look at ourselves, because we often tell the students that we learn as much as they learn sometimes going through this training. We learn in the process. So with that being said, Una, tell me how has our work made a difference in you specifically?
That's a hard question. I'm the kind of person who wants everything to be sunshine and rainbows all the time, and this is not the content that is always sunshine and rainbows. And even just this week, with all of the work around Anne Frank and Emmett Till that has been done by Open Stage, it's just overwhelming sometimes. Man's inhumanity to man can be so overwhelming. So it's been really hard for me sometimes, because there are people who aren't ready to have this conversation, and sometimes people in our audience are required to be in the conversation, and so when they're required to be there and they're not quite ready to be there, it isn't the sunshine and rainbows that I'm
going with umbrellas. That's right.
You're going in with umbrellas. And Joe, sometimes we've heard feedback. Sometimes people say, you're doing too much. You're putting too much at us.
That's right.
And other times people have said, you're not giving us enough. Give us more. We want more.
That's right.
And so striking the balance on just, understanding what the audience need, what the participants, I should say,
right.
and Joe and I are able to ask if they have any questions, but for me, it has been finding a balance of trying to be in that good position where it's, not too little and not too much. And for myself, trying to balance being vulnerable and, vulnerability and maybe self-preservation might be the word, and trying to find that balance. So this is a hard arena to come in and have conversations. I continue to learn. I'm continuing to educate myself on content and on history, in addition to educate myself on delivering this material and content. So I think what I've learned is to continue doing what feels right to me, and understand that it might not please everybody.
That's right.
And that's okay.
That's right.
And when there are people who want to stay in the fear zone, I might not be able to get them out of the fear zone, and I have to be okay with the hope, and I think hope has been talked about this week a lot too, with the hope that they will eventually come around. So a lot of interpersonal things have happened in the last couple of years that have maybe caused me to become a little bit more tough and a little bit more able to listen to critiques and not take them personally.
Yeah. Now you're right about that. That is something that we've had to come to grips with, because you can imagine when you have this kind of a topic, you'll get some interesting responses from the participants, and so we can't be thin-skinned about it. We have to actually be empathetic and be good listeners and hear where people are coming from. One of the things that I know we have tried to. Our approach has been, as I said, not to try and be judgmental and make people feel guilty or feel put upon. But our approach is to try and engage people in a civil conversation. That's our intent, is to help people to have a civil conversation in a way that's non-threatening. Now, it might be uncomfortable, but we'll never make it threatening where they feel put on the spot, but we don't shirk away from the critical issues, but we do it in a way where we try to model what we've talked about throughout the training, and that's about being respectful of where other people are and bringing them along. And so that's our approach to the training, and so I think that's what's caused it to resonate with 5,500 people in so many organizations, the fact that our approach is in a way. Now some might argue, well, you guys aren't holding them to task enough, you know what I mean? And that might be true, perhaps, maybe, but I like to think of it as we're the first wave, okay? We're softening up the beaches, and if someone wants to come in along behind us with a little more, peeling the layers off the onion a little bit more and delve a little deeper, that's their prerogative, and it may be, in fact, in order. But our first attempt is to try and engage people in having the conversation, and we have to do it in such a way that people don't immediately rebel and become overly sensitive and defensive in the process. So that's what we've tried to do.
Yeah, and I think we found that more than anything, there's just a lot of lack of awareness, in the conversations that we're having and the people we're talking to. I just think there's more of a lack of awareness where people have been in their own circles of influence. They've been around people who look like they do, who think like they do, who have the same ideas and values as they do, and they're so used to that and so comfortable with that when you start talking to people about breaking out of those circles and learning something from someone who doesn't have the same opinions that you do, hasn't had the same life experience as you have, that's when I think we really start to make the impact, and that's when people really start to have the change, when when they're moving out of their kind of echo chambers into really considering perspectives that are different from their own. So, I mean, we haven't had real pushback saying that this is not right or, anything like that, but more so people who have said that it's a lack of awareness. People just have generally not had conversations like these. So,
Right, that's right.
So Joe, if an organization of any type, a corporation or school or whatever, was trying to start with unrolling a DEI initiative in their organization, what would you say to that person or to that group about our program or about how we could help?
Okay. I think that we first of all, I'd want to make sure, and Una and I would want to make sure that they understand why they're doing it. It can't be because it's a fad. I mean, you have to be committed to, if you're talking about the whole, as we say in the training, the whole intent of this whole conversation is to develop a workplace of belonging.
Culture,
And so that people feel a sense of belonging. That's the outcome that we desire, that people feel like this is a place where I can be the authentic me, and what I bring to the table is valued and respected. And so you have to be sure that that's why you're embarking on this conversation as an organization. Is that the environment you're trying to create? Because you don't want to do this if it's just about, because it's the latest thing to do, that in order to have some credibility, we've got to make sure that we check the box that said we did some DEI. That's not the rationale for doing it. If that's your motivation, then it's going to be problematic in its implementation. But if in fact you are doing it for the right reasons, certainly we believe that we can be of some assistance in this regard. We think that if you are serious about doing this, we can come in and do it in a way that will again begin to create a forum, an atmosphere where people feel comfortable having the conversation, and I think that's so crucial.
Yeah. And we have found too that when any organization is considering embarking on an initiative like this, the leadership has to be on board. The leadership, it has to come from the leadership of the organization and not in a token way. The leadership of the organization has to be present in the trainings, has to be involved and engaged. What we do as training is really only one part of maybe a 10-step process where organizations does the organization have a DEI statement? Is the organization going to follow our program by creating a DEI statement? And then once you create that DEI statement and identify your core values, you have to uphold them. And you have to hold people accountable. So then you're building DEI standards into your human resources. You're building DEI standards into salary actions and promotions and in coaching. So, the leadership involvement and the understanding that this isn't a one step where Joe and I come in, spend 2 hours with you and leave. This is part of a long process. And some of the organizations that we started working with from the very beginning, since our training, they have created employee assistance or employee affinity groups where they might have a group for members of the LGBT population. They might have a group for people who have disabilities. So and then maybe different cultural groups are represented. So companies have taken our training and they've taken it to the next level and created employee affinity groups where they can meet and support one another with their unique and special needs.
I think some even have added staff.
Dedicated
staff, yes. A dedicated staff person to keep this initiative going, to manage the process throughout the organization, because you just can't leave it to chance. Dr. King said, change seldom rolls in on the wheels of inevitability, but it takes constant change, constant pressure, and intentionality. And so some of these organizations have done that, and those are the ones who will be most successful.
I do think, as I look, on LinkedIn and as I look on other social medias, I think DEI training, DEI positions within companies are one of the most popular positions I've seen advertised lately, where companies understand they can't just say that we're going to create a culture of belonging. You have to have a plan, and you have to have someone to be the champion of that plan. And Joe and I and our program is part of that plan.
Yeah, very, very true. And this whole notion of even just the DEI personnel, organizations that are serious tend to put someone in that capacity, and that's a good thing. And that's it takes, in my estimation, a lot of courage on the part of the organization if they're sincere about it, and this person has a direct line to the CEO, so that it doesn't get buried down in the organization. That if there's a resource issue or issue of commitment or pushback from others throughout the organization, this person has the ear of the head person. That's important. But I would just encourage organizations that are considering this, don't be dissuaded by those who would look at diversity, equity, and inclusion in a negative way. You've got some people who want to decry it as a flavor of the month, some talk about it's just about being woke, and you hear all these kind of derisive terms. But what I'm saying, if you're serious about creating an environment where people feel like I have a stake in this organization, that I have a sense of belonging, that my opinions matter, that this organization is fair, this is a place that I want to work, this is a place that I'm committed to. When you can create that kind of environment, then this DEI is the way to go. But you cannot do it if you're going to quake every time someone comes back at you and say, well, why are you all doing that DEI stuff? You've got to, once you know why you're doing it, you've got to stick to your guns and move forward in a methodical, organized approach. Una and I come in and do a 2-hour presentation. 2 hours is not going to solve the world's problems. We're not going to fix your organization in 2 hours. Our intent, again, is to begin the conversation so that people are receptive to some of the follow-on initiatives that you're going to bring on board. That's where we come in, and we help you as an organization jumpstart this very vital conversation. And so, and we've become quite adept at doing it. And so if you want someone to come in and help you begin that conversation, I think there's an opportunity for us to collaborate with you.
And Joe, just talking about some of the individual reactions,
yes,
and what you've just described, some of the flaws have been uncovered when there's a lack of communication. So if the organization isn't communicating what they're doing, if this is just a surprise, all of a sudden we show up and we're here to talk about diversity, equity, and inclusion, and some people are saying, why? Did we do something wrong? What happened?
We've heard that. That's right.
And so over communicate about your company's DEI initiatives. Have the core values communicated where everyone understands what they are, and everyone understands their role in keeping their core values in practice. And then the other thing that, in terms of individual responses that we've realized is that trust is essential to this effort. There has to be trust. There has to be trust from the employees to the leadership, from the leadership to the employees, from employee to coworker. There has to be trust. And if people within that organization don't have even even the most basic sense of trust in the organization, in their coworkers, in their leadership, then that probably should be addressed before bringing us in to do work around diversity, equity, inclusion.
And talk about trust. The trust even goes to the point where the organization has to trust Una and I
Yes.
with their team members, so that we represent the company as well and the intentions of the company. But that trust goes the other way too, because Una and I have a compact, if you will, with the employees that if we discover or uncover something that needs to be brought to management's attention, then we'll do that as well. And that's a part of our responsibility to the employees. If they are candid enough and comfortable enough to share with us some of the things that they might otherwise be reluctant to share with the organization, then we kind of have a responsibility to carry that water for them without naming any names, but just raising the awareness of the issue that perhaps they've been reluctant to raise. We have a responsibility, so our trust also lies with them in terms of being honest and properly handling the information that they share with us.
Yeah, you're right. I wanted to say one more thing about this individual factor and responses that we've gotten. Some of the top responses have been around, I want to hold on to my religious values, or I want to hold on to my political values. And what you're saying disagrees with my religious values or disagrees with my political values. And I just want to summarize by saying you can keep all your religious values and all of your political values and still be kind to other human beings. And you can keep your own personal values and still be kind to the humans that you spend 40 plus hours working with a week at a time. You can't keep your judgment, and you can't hold on to the anger and frustration and still be kind at the same time. So when we do have people talk about, well, this is what my church has taught me, or this is what my faith-based organization has taught me, we say, okay, we understand. We're not telling anyone anything that should disagree with your values. We're saying you can keep all that and stay out of judgment of others and be kind. They should all be able to coexist.
Yeah, well said. Well said.
Yeah.
Well said.
Yeah.
Well said. Well said. What else?
You want to talk about the resources?
Well, yeah, you want to talk about some of the resources that we provide? Because Una, you put together these resources. We have a great partnership. Una's the kind of person that if you were in college and you had a teammate, this is one you want to be on your team. Yeah, because Una will get to the task, I tell you. And so that's the one you want to have on your team. And so Una has really taken the initiative to pull together a lot of these materials. And so I think maybe if you could take a few moments to talk about some of the things that we do offer.
Yeah, I think the resources are, they have a long shelf life. There's no expiration date on the resources.
That's right.
So even though we're going to be with the groups for 2 hours, we put together a packet of materials. And the materials have recommended reading. I brought a few books here today. This one is called At the Dark End of the Street. It's the Rosa Parks story from a perspective that most of us have never heard and were not taught
Excellent book.
in school. This one is How to Be an Anti-Racist by Ibram Kendi. I'd say this is essential reading for anyone who's interested in this topic. And then The New Jim Crow, and this is the 10-year anniversary edition, which has a foreword written by Michelle Alexander, and I almost think that the foreword is essential reading in and of itself. But we put all these books and resources together. We list out movies, we list out video links, we list out not only historical
Yeah,
movies, but
documentaries, that's right.
just regular movies that might show an experience that is different from the life experience that we've lived. We put in there links to other diversity and inclusion groups. There's, throughout this area, there's the diversity and inclusion professionals of Central PA, there's the African American Chamber, there's the Latino Hispanic Community Center, there's the Keystone Business Alliance, which is the LGBT business chamber. So we put all these resources together, and our call to action to people is read something from our list or do something, within the next month. Go to a restaurant that serves food from another culture and go immerse yourself in that culture just through eating food. Go to community events. I was last week at a community event that was put on by a collaborative of South Asian women who are entrepreneurs in this area. And I can tell you, I walked into the room as the minority. I walked in alone. I went to the event by myself and made friends within, seconds. I was so welcomed, and I really felt like there was a sisterhood there that was palpable. So we're putting all these resources together. We put some of our slides together that can encourage people to understand. We put definitions together. What is an ally? What is a microaggression? Mm-hmm. We put all these definitions together so that people can understand, is that thing that I said actually coming across as a microaggression? And you might not have meant it to, but maybe it is. So the resources are worth the cost of admission.
There you go.
The resources are worth it, and we also have a part 2 if you want to kind of mention part 1 and part 2.
Well, what we try to do after we've done that initial 2-hour overview, we're prepared to come back then and work with the organization, particularly some of the management or the supervisory level. The people who actually have to impact the employees the most. And so we help them learn how to have these conversations with their staff. And so we spend 2 hours with them going over scenarios that they might encounter, give them some tips and techniques on how to manage that whole conversation so that they can be successful, because we want them, as Una said, this is not about you've checked the box, you've had a session. So yes, you've done the 2-hour session, and now, what are you going to do with it? What are you going to do? And because we don't want you to feel ill-equipped, then we've taken our time to give you a leg up, if you will, some things you can anticipate as you try to engage your employees in these conversations. And then here are some ways to navigate that whole exchange. So that's our part 2, and I think that's been very effective as well.
And in part 2, we actually require that the participants take an implicit bias test before they participate. And we get a lot of pushback to say, oh, the test was broken, oh, it didn't work, but it's a really well done test. It's the best test that we've found, and it requires people to look in a mirror in a really intense way and uncover some blind spots. The biases that we all have just been formed from how we've been taught, how we've been educated, how we've grown up, and we're, again, not putting any fault there, but we're just saying you need to understand what your biases are before you can overcome them. Mm-hmm. So in part 2, we give a lot of information on implicit bias. We give a lot of resources and statistics on what our communities really look like in this area. Mm-hmm. We define privilege, and we have people take a look at some areas where they may be privileged and other areas where they may be marginalized, and that self-assessment is kind of an advanced level after the original curriculum.
So we between those 2 sessions, you'd be well on your way as an organization And then if you took to heart any of the things, the suggestion we give about setting up your structure and setting up your policy, et cetera, your DEI statement, and putting in pieces in place, and just taking advantage of the resources that we have, you'd be well on your way on your DEI journey, well on your way to creating the kind of a work environment that you espouse, the kind of work environment that you say you want to create. You'll be well on your way. Again, we come in to maybe part 2, another 2 hours, but again, even those 4 hours aren't enough. This is continual, you know. Joe Madison, AKA the Black Eagle on Sirius XM Radio, often says that the difference between a moment and a movement is sacrifice. And so how much are you willing to put into this? And that's what we're here to do, is to help you realize that it is achievable, but there's some work you have to put in, but we're giving you an underpinning to know that you can be successful, but you've got to be willing to put in the work.
Nice.
Yeah.
So this little conversation was called At the Heart of Humanity.
At the Heart of Humanity.
So to go along with the Good at Heart Festival. So I wanted to just close with a couple of statements, and then if there's time, we're happy to answer any questions. Learning and understanding are at the heart of humanity. Cultural curiosity is at the heart of humanity. There is no judgment at the heart of humanity. Kindness lives at the heart of humanity. And the heart of humanity craves a sense of belonging. Thank you all so much.
Does anyone have any questions for Una or Joe? Okay.
Did we cover everything?
I think you did. Well done.
Hi. I was wondering, for people who are looking to maybe get into a new career in DEI, in other words, a DEI manager, director, whatnot, do you do any one-on-one trainings with folks who are looking for a career change? And if so, what does that look like?
Yeah, we do not, but there are many, many resources around. We haven't found that we are needed in that space because there are so many other resources, certificate programs,
Right.
and even if you just Google it and look for DEI training, I know it exists. I know it exists out there. We are not in that arena right now.
But it is there. It's out
It's
there.
there.
It's not hard to locate either. But if anytime you just want to sit down and chat with us, we're always open to that. My goodness gracious.
If I knew someone.
Hey, we're always
Yeah.
open. We love
Yeah.
one conversation at a time. We love
That's
meeting
right.
people. So that's not a problem. We just not may able to help you complete where you're trying to get to,
Yeah.
but we're always open to conversation and dialogue.
Any other questions for Una and Joe? Awesome. Well, thank you very much for being here this evening, and a big round of applause again for Una and Joe, please.
Thank you.
Thank you.